Good afternoon. It's February 6th, and we're starting the planning board meeting. Before we get started with items, I just want to mention that members of the board, members of the planning department, members of the parks department yesterday went to a lovely all-day educational conference sponsored by ULI at the Building Museum in downtown DC. The topic was From Crisis to Prosperity, Creating Our Region's Playbook of Resilient Housing and Economic Development Solutions. Regional players from many of the counties in the DC metro area, from Northern Virginia, Montgomery County, the District of Columbia, and others, all focusing on the crisis of our housing in the area, and as well as economic development and how they're so closely tied. So we're out there, we are trying to find solutions to our really pressing housing crisis and our economic development, how to improve our economic development in the region. So I just wanted to say that, we're working on it. That it's not just our problem, but it's a regional problem, and we're trying to come up with not only local solutions, but regional solutions. So wanted to start with that. Now we're on item 1A, preliminary matters, where we're going to start with adoption and resolution. We have several this morning. I'll just highlight the names of each one and not all the numbers of the plan. So the first is 7501 Standish Place Forest Conservation Plan, Chamberton Solar Sugarloaf Forest Conservation Plan, 7749 Old Georgetown Road Preliminary Plan, Site Plan, and Forest Conservation Plan, Democracy Center Preliminary Plan, Site Plan, and Forest Conservation Plan, and Falkland North Preliminary Plan. Do I have a motion for approval of these 9 resolutions?
I move to approve these 9 resolutions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 3-0. The next is item 1B, approval of minutes. We have 2 this morning, January 16th and January 23rd, 2025. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 3-0. The next is record plats. We have 2 this afternoon. Subdivision plan number 2/2025-0310 through 2/2025-0370, Parkland Trace. And the second is subdivision plat number 2/2025-0210, Section 3, Manor Park. Both staff is recommending approval. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. That's 3-0. The next is item number 8, University Boulevard Quarter Plan Updated Notice, where staff is recommending approval of the updated notice, which is amending the record closing date from March 6th to March 13th. Do I have a motion for approval to amend the updated notice, to approve the amendment of the updated notice?
I move to approve the updated amendment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 3-0. And now we're on our roundtable discussion with Parks Director Mitty Figueredo. Welcome.
Thank you. So this afternoon, we're going to be presenting to you an update on our plans for disc golf in Montgomery Park. So if you recall, this came up recently when we were doing the forest conservation approval for this project, and planning board members had some questions and seemed to show a lot of interest in this project, and so we wanted to come back and tell you about it in more detail and give you an opportunity to ask questions. And with that, I will hand this over to staff. Thank you.
Good afternoon. For the record, Chuck Hines, Park Planning and Stewardship, Long Range Planning. With me here is Bob Turnbull, Natural Surface Trail Construction Manager, or Program Manager, excuse me, and Evan Dinteman, Landscape Architect with the Park Development Division. We're here to talk to you about the Northwest Branch Disc Golf Course, which has been in the planning stages for a couple of years now, and today we're going to update you on where we are with the project, and a related project, the Northwest Branch Trail, which goes around the disc golf course. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to cover the park planning elements of today's presentation. Evan's going to cover the park development, and then Bob's going to cover the trail planning. So with park planning, going to give you a background on disc golf, why it's an emerging trend or a rapidly growing trend, talk about what it takes to build a golf course, what kind of land we're looking for, the site suitability. Then we'll talk about why we selected Northwest Branch. We'll talk a little bit about outreach and engagement with the community and with the stakeholders. And then we'll talk about our coordination with the National Capital Trolley Museum, which is an adjacent public-private partnership. First, about disc golf. It is similar to golf, except instead of swings, you count throws. It has par 3, par 4, and par 5 holes, meaning it should take 3 throws, 4 throws, or 5 throws to get to the hole, which is the basket, which we'll get to. There's 3 different types of discs. They're not Frisbees. They're a little bit heavier, and I will invite you to field them if you so want to. Yeah. Yeah, so a driver is the lightest. There's one driver there and one fairway wood. The putter is a little bit heavier, and the reason why the lighter ones are intended to go further, but without as much accuracy, and down to the putter, which is the heaviest, which is intended to be thrown with the most accuracy. So the final throw goes into the basket. That's the putt. Courses generally have 9, 18, or 27 holes, and that's for both recreation and competition. And then practice courses generally have 3 to 6 holes. So as you can see on the slide, there's a drive, there's the fairway throw, and then the putt to the basket. Disc golf has been growing rapidly over the last 25 years or so. The map on the top 2 maps are from an app called UDisc, which is a company that provides an app for disc golfers to find courses and keep track of their scores. The map on the left is from 2000. Each dot is a disc golf course. On the right is how many more disc golf courses we have in the United States. It's exploded, especially since the pandemic. What the bottom map is showing is all the disc golf courses by state. The darker colors mean there's more disc golf courses, and the lighter colors mean there are fewer disc golf courses. Maryland ranks about 40th out of 50 states per capita. In terms of policy guidance, the PROS plan that was adopted by this board back in 2022 included a recommendation to explore opportunities for disc golf facilities. There are only 2 public disc golf courses on parkland in the Montgomery and Prince George's County area of the DC region. Seneca Creek State Park has 27 holes, Calvert Road has 18, and there's a number of private courses, and we also have a practice course practice holes at Avenel Local Park. Northwest Branch is sort of filling a service gap. The disc golf community had asked us back in the 2016 or so, could disc golf be accommodated at Wheaton because it fills a gap, and we figured out that we couldn't fit it at Wheaton, but we're here presenting about the alternative Northwest Branch. In terms of site suitability, we're looking for a site that's about 30 to 50 acres, and that's for 18 holes. You can fit 9-hole courses on smaller sites, but we're building an 18-hole disc golf course. It's environmentally unconstrained, but players love woods, so woods are great. Even water features are great. There's no water features here, but disc golfers do like water features. The course should be designed with nature, or can be designed with nature, lots of natural features, lots of terrain if possible. It should have good transportation access, and it should be compatible with nearby or adjacent park facilities. This is a map of Northwest Branch Recreational Park. To the west is Lay Hill Local Park, and to the north is Northwest Swing Golf Course, just to distinguish it from what we're talking about today. So switching over to the map on the right, you can see the ICC at the bottom of the map. The Trolley Museum is labeled, and the disc golf course is in yellow. And that's the site we'll be talking about today. We started community outreach and engagement back in 2023. We held a community meeting to introduce the idea to the community and the stakeholders and the players. We had about 100 people in attendance. It was really well attended. We also, following that public meeting, we had an open town hall on our website that we invited people to comment, share their concerns, or express their support for the project. And we had about 130 or so respondents to that. 80% in support.
So did you get good comments? Was it mostly in support? Do you remember what was the gist?
I do. Most of the comments from the disc golf players were that, they're very excited about an additional public course in Montgomery County and in the DC area. Disc golfers tend to drive up to 2 or 3 hours to find a disc golf course. This will serve not only Montgomery County, but the whole DC region and perhaps even the Baltimore region. People will come down and play. From the community, what we heard was people were concerned about the impact of the backyards, which we'll talk about. They were concerned about the Northwest Branch trailhead off of Cut Stone Way. People would be parking there to play the disc golf course. I think we'll address that. And they were concerned about noise, but disc golf is not noisy. And they were concerned about traffic. And on disc golf courses, except for tournaments, aren't big traffic generators. There might be 15 to 20 rounds a day on a typical day. On a busy weekend, you might have up to 100 rounds, but spread out throughout the day. So our coordination with the National Capital Trolley Museum, that's one of our 20 or so public-private partnerships on parkland. It's a long-term lease of commissioned land. The area on the map in yellow is the land that's included under the lease agreement. It does not include the parking lot, and it really doesn't include the rest of the park, even though the trolley tracks go through it. The actual lease terms deal with the area in yellow. I'll talk about the red area in a minute. The opportunities with the Trolley Museum, they were very excited about the project, that it would bring more people to the park and to the museum. It would activate the park. They were excited about partnership opportunities and tournaments. So when there's a disc golf tournament, the museum would operate a similar program at the same time to complement what's happening on the disc golf course. And they were excited that the course would include trolley-themed elements, which Evan will get into. Their concerns were parking. They were concerned that when Trolley Museum's busy, that the disc golfers might overwhelm the parking. And like I said, on a typical day, that wouldn't happen. We would not allow tournaments to be scheduled at the same time that the Trolley Museum is having a large event. That's how parking will be addressed. But we do have some overflow parking ideas. They were concerned about the discs being thrown over or onto trolley tracks, and as Evan will get into, we dealt with that by providing a buffer, a 100-foot buffer at minimum between the disc golf fairways and the tracks. And then getting into the red area, the Trolley Museum may be expanding in the future to include additional building to store trolley cars. There's a couple trolley museums on the East Coast that are likely to close, and those museums are looking for places to put their inventory, and the National Capital Trolley Museum is one of the places where those trolley cars might be going. So they didn't want us to impact that potential area for expansion, which we haven't. Now going to hand it off to Evan to talk about the actual project.
Thanks, Chuck. Evan Dinteman, Park Development Division. So we were here a couple weeks ago, and we had a really nice discussion. I think everybody's really excited about the project. So we're excited to bring some more, concrete visuals and some more details about the disc golf course here today. So we've split this project up into two concurrent phases. The first phase, I'll call phase 1A, which is the disc golf course itself. So the disc golf course we've designed to be an 18-hole course, which, as Chuck mentioned, is pretty standard and allows us to potentially host some tournaments. And I think the disc golf community will be very happy about that. It'll also have 2 9-hole loops. So, if you follow on this map here, so hole 1 kind of starts near the parking lot, and that green rectangle there is where we're proposing to have a plaza and kind of a picnic pavilion area. And so hole 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 9 will kind of lead you in a loop back to the original picnic and plaza area. And then the same for hole 10 through 18. So, what we've set up is kind of 2 9-hole loops that can be played if you want to play the whole course, or if you just want to play half a course, if you don't have a full day. The community is really excited about that. We'll also have branded course signage and wayfinding. One of the community feedback we got was, courses can be really hard to find your way around when you're out there. So making sure that we've got signage leading folks from, hole 1 to 2, especially once we get back to hole like 13, 14, and 15, making sure there's clear paths between each hole. There'll be 2 tee pads and 2 baskets on most holes, which allows players to play almost a different course every time they go out there. They can choose which tee and basket to use. Minimal cutting and clearing will be happening. I think we talked about that with regards to the FCP. We are preserving almost all of the specimen trees. And then, as Chuck mentioned, the Trolley Museum has been gracious enough to provide us some old retired tracks sections, and we'll be using those in some strategic ways and some creative ways, and I'll show that here in a bit. So these images here are little excerpts from what will be our kind of welcome sign for the disc golf course. So if you're familiar with swing golf, or what we're calling swing golf to differentiate it, there's usually a map or something at the start of the course showing you the layout of the course, getting you kind of acclimated to where you're going to be going and kind of how long the course is or how short it is. And then a question that came up a couple weeks ago was, how do you play disc golf? And we do expect we'll be welcoming a lot of new players to this course. So we are going to put a little bit of text. That's not really here to read through it now, but it's really just to show that we are going to provide some, here's how to do it if you're new to the sport. Here's where the out of bounds areas are. Here's how you play safely. And then last but not least, making sure that the players know where the out of bounds areas are. So as Chuck's mentioned, we've put a 100-foot buffer on the trolley tracks. We've also put a 100-foot buffer from any private property line. So the course will not be right adjacent to any of these, adjacent park uses, whether it's private property or the trolley tracks. So we really don't see, any concerns with discs flying into somebody's backyard. And I've talked to a couple of the landowners. They're really excited. One of the property owners actually told me they bought a basket in their backyard so they could practice for when the course opens, which is really cool. But, I told them you shouldn't really worry about stray discs. I don't think it's going to be a common occurrence.
So people are going to bring their own discs, or we going to provide the disc? Just the disc is what they need to bring?
So they'll bring their own discs. They're actually very affordable. Some of the professional level discs can get a little more expensive, but really to play this game, you really just need 1 disc. A lot of people will come with 3, the driver, the fairway disc, and the putter. And then professional players will come with something like 15 or 20 discs that all have their own, use. But they sell discs at Walmart, Dick's Sporting Goods, any of the local retailers, Amazon,
Amazon.
and, you
So
know,
that's the only thing they need.
That's the only thing they
Just
need.
one or two discs, and they
Correct.
can share the disc. And how many people can play at a time together? 4, 3, 5?
yeah, I mean, there's no real
There is no limit.
requirement. They could play in a big group, but generally, it's recommended no more than 4, sorry, to keep everything moving quickly.
Yeah, I'll also share that the Trolley Museum is interested in sometime in the future, selling disc golfs in their store. The Calvert Road Park course in Prince George's County, the College Park Aviation Museum sells discs for people who want to learn about the sport.
These are just some images of kind of where we are with concepting on some of the signage that you'll see out on the course. The sign on the left is one you might see at a tee. So this would be like hole 2, for example. You can see that we're showing where the long and the short basket are, and then where the long and the short tee are. And then wayfinding signage, which will be smaller signage, but there'll be a good bit of it out on the course, making sure folks know how to get from one tee to the next or from a basket to the next tee. And then, you know, one area that we're planning to use some of the trolley track is just for signposts. And, you know, it's just a nice kind of tie-in without making the course, you know, like have old trolley cars or something out there, you know, just kind of a small tie-in to the museum. Phase 1B, again, a concurrent phase, so these are kind of moving forward at the same time, is a plaza area and some supporting infrastructure for the disc golf course. So you can see the existing museum there in the bottom left. We've got some existing ADA parking that we'll be bringing up to code and kind of improving. And then from that ADA parking, we'll provide a ADA walkway back to both the plaza and the disc golf course. So the plaza will include bioretention for the new impervious surface. We'll also propose a shelter with picnic tables, some benches, a drinking fountain. We may have a vaulted toilet or certainly portable toilets there, and then trash cans as well. I mentioned the improved ADA parking and the ADA access. We're also, you can kind of see there's a kind of a ring or a looping path there that connects T1, basket 9, T10, and basket 18. And so we did want to provide some paved access to a few of the holes, and that's how we went about that.
So they can drive like cart on it?
No,
Golf cart?
we won't have any golf carts, but if there was somebody mobility challenged, they could access some of the tees.
Okay.
And then we'll also have maintenance access via the existing asphalt drive and gravel drive that exists. So the estimated construction schedule for both of these phases, as I said, they're moving kind of concurrently, but at slightly different speeds. We expect 100% course design by spring, so really pretty soon here. And then construction could happen this summer if we're able to get our permits in time. The course may then be able to open in the fall, this fall. And even if the plaza and the infrastructure portion in Phase 1B is not quite complete, I do think we could potentially soft open the course. No reason to have a completed course that community members can enjoy. And then for Phase 1B, we expect, again, this spring, 100% drawings, but permits will be a little more complicated for the plaza, so that may stretch into the summer. We can then start construction in the fall, just a few months later, and hopefully open the plaza sometime in the winter of 2025.
Yeah, we definitely like to attend if you have ribbon cutting and maybe play, I don't know.
Great, yeah, we were already talking, we should schedule a time for some staff to get out and play together. That would be fun.
Good afternoon, Bob Turnbull, Natural Surface Trails Program Manager for the Montgomery Parks Department. And I'm here today to talk to you about the newly constructed Northwest Branch Trail Extension and the newly constructed Trolley Loop Trail. Back when we got wind that they were looking at possibly creating a disc golf course in this area, We were aware per the 2016 Countywide Park Trails Plan that a master plan natural surface trail, multi-use, was supposed to go through this property. So we worked really quickly with Chuck and his team and also the people at the Trolley Car Museum and alerted the neighborhood of Stonegate community to the idea we were going to start construction of this trail. So we worked with our normal players in Park Planning and Stewardship our division to make sure our archaeologists, our forest ecologists, our aquatic ecologists, and everyone else was okay with the alignment we chose. And we wanted to get out there first kind of to set the limits of where the new disc golf could go. So if you see it in this diagram, if you can follow it, and if you can't, I apologize because it's not really pulling up, but the trail starts, this is very sensitive. Yeah, right down here along Bonifant Road, comes up and goes in behind the newly constructed athletic field maintenance area, loops down around and goes behind the trolley museum or trolley tracks, all up along Northwest Branch, loops out around this point, and then connects back over to Cutstone Way in the Stonegate community. And currently, that is all labeled Northwest Branch Trail. We were constructing this around the winter of 2023, right at the same time we were constructing the Wheaton Gravity Mountain Bike Park. During that time, we finished this and then came back after the completion of the Wheaton Gravity Park and constructed the Trolley Loop Trail. This current Northwest Branch Trail is open to mountain bikers, hikers, and equestrians. It's 2.1 miles in length. The Trolley Loop Trail is a little over 0.8 of a mile, but it really provides a really nice recreational facility out there. In talking with the Trolley Museum, they are really excited about the Trolley Loop Trail and possibly doing some additional interpretation for their site, because it does have some nice views of the tracks. Going forward, next slide, we're looking at the future connection of the Northwest Branch Trail up to and under Maryland Route 28. There are some issues we got to work through, primarily working with the golf course and the Blake High School properties. As you can see in the dotted green line, that is the future alignment that goes right through the golf course or right along the edge of the golf course. So we're really worried about drives right to the face or golf balls to our trail users. So we're going to work through those issues and see if we can shrink that fairway down and maybe provide some additional security for
So
the
Bob,
users.
the maroon color that you showed on the previous page slide is already in place, correct?
Yes, everything you saw on the previous slide is in place.
And then the green one that you show starts from top right corner, the green dash line is the one that it's not done yet.
No, it is currently in design, and we're still trying to figure out some of those issues I just spoke about.
And considering you sitting there, I'm assuming everything is natural,
Yes,
correct?
this is all natural surface trail, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, this is part of the 2016 Countywide Park Trails Plan.
okay, thank
So,
you.
We're hopefully scheduled for somewhere in FY '26, FY '27, depending on those issues and how we work those out. Next. And then finally, as we were working on this and people were finding out about this new trail, a lot of our constituents came to us and were wondering if we were going to be able to connect to Lay Hill Local Park. And currently, we are looking at the feasibility study to do this thing. During the ICC construction, there was quite a bit of stream restoration done in this segment. And if you see right here in the middle of the map, that solid white bar, right to left, would connect the parking area and ball diamonds of the Lay Hill Local Park to the Northwest Branch Trail. It's something we think is a big opportunity for us to connect. It would alleviate some parking issues for people parking at the museum and the other small lot over on that side of the creek. So, and it would just connect two parks really well. So we just think it's a great idea. So we're going to work towards finding a location for that bridge in the future.
So this is the only one that have bridge. The previous one that you said it goes under 28 is an existing
back to
bridge
the-
there?
No, so when 28 was constructed, we knew of this connection. So we had Maryland, when they constructed this 28, they gave us enough room to go underneath as an underpass as part of that bridge. And if you can see just to the north of that 28 bridge, there is a little built trail we had a developer built back in,
On the top,
yes,
okay.
and back in like 2005,
So,
2006.
but they're not connected under the intersection.
They are.
They
It
are
will connect. It will connect once
So
we,
they're already a space and everything there?
yes, there's
Oh,
already
okay.
plenty, we don't have to
So that
create
makes
another
it
bridge.
really easy.
No, it makes it, yes, we planned ahead for
Okay.
that. And then from there, just so everyone understands the master plan connection, when that comes up to a paved trail along 28, that'll take you over to Lay Hill Road, which also has a paved trail that will then take you all the way up into
Okay.
Woodlawn. So,
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah.
Okay.
That concludes our presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have any additional questions or comments?
Yeah, this is great. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for responding to our request a couple of weeks ago to get more detail about the proposed disc golf. You know, as I said before, I was in Chicago recently, and I saw, you talked about I saw some diehards that had a little box that had those 15, you know, these weren't they had for every scenario. So I'm looking forward to it. I love how the speed that you're doing this from the pros plan in 22 to, you know, having it done 3 years later. I think that's really great. I loved about how, as we think for, you know, more and more about co-location, you know, the trolley museum to the golf, the swing golf to the disc golf and to the, hopefully the park, you know, so that makes it, you know, like a destination place. You know, you drop maybe the kids off to do their this, you do that, someone does their golf, and it just is, so I really love that. And maybe, you know, once you get it all set up, maybe, you know, in addition to your brochure, maybe you can have something on your website about, you know, how to play disc golf and all this other stuff, so when people go. And question I had, will there be a fee to do this, just out of curiosity?
No, 90% of disc golf courses are free to play around the country because they're on public land. Like I said, there are a couple private courses in Montgomery County at swim and racket clubs where you have to be a member of that swim and racket club to use the disc golf course.
Okay.
But generally disc golf is free except for tournaments.
Okay, great.
Tournaments might have a fee.
Good. And has the design been rated yet? You know how, you know,
So that's a great question. So we have a professional disc golf player as a design consultant on this. He's from Baltimore. He's from Maryland. I assume this course will receive a rating. It does not have one now, but he will make sure this course is able to hold tournaments, is able to have a rating, is able to appeal to everybody from beginners all the way up through professional players. So we're excited about that.
Okay, great. Looking forward to it. Any comments or questions from?
I remember that you said it's like what the cost was, 350 something. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the disc golf course itself is like in the $380,000 range. There'll be some additional costs for some of those ADA improvements and the plaza and things
And that includes design and construction.
for the disc golf course.
This is one of the best cost-benefit project for the Parks Department. It's like what Bob Turnbull does with his natural trail. He gives us the best value for the money that we use. It's fantastic. It's going to be used. It's really needed. It's such a cost-effective thing. And above all, it's free. Everybody can come. And it's not that many of those there. And it is fantastic. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, I just want to say as well, this is really awesome to see. And it's also really cool how, as you talked about, the trail work, of course, integrates so well with all of this. And it's just really an awesome kind of collaborative project, and just ongoing connections of these trails and the expansion of the network. It's really great. And my only question, I was trying to pull up the trail map that we have online as I was just about to start talking about this or ask this question, but is there now a single connection from Whedon Regional Park all the way up to this area now? Is it possible to go on a trail all the way up to where this might be?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. You can jump on the Northwest Branch Trail right at Kent Mill Road.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, and then take this up and go across at the light at Randolph, and then you're on Northwest Branch Trail all the way up underneath the ICC to Bonifant to a marked sign, and it has a rapid flashing beacon for the crossing of Bonifant Road there, right at the entrance to the Trolley Car Museum. So
Gotcha,
once you go
yeah,
across,
yeah.
you'll see the trail sign on your left.
Yeah, that's great. And on the northern end that you were saying there, a developer built a very small segment kind of just above that highway. Are there plans to extend that segment in a certain, like, north or northeast?
Yeah, yes, there is. Actually, we just had another developer come through we're working with right now on Ednor Road that is going to dedicate some land to park that will allow us to create a natural surface connection as well as the paved connection up to Woodlawn.
Okay,
So
yeah,
those are coming in the future.
great, yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks so much for your work on this.
Director Figueredo, back to you.
I think that concludes our presentation.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we're just going to take a 1 minute break to switch over to our next meeting, which will be around the legislative update. We'll have our General Counsel, Deborah Borden, to provide that. We'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you. Good afternoon. We're on item number 5, legislative update. Our General Counsel, Deborah Borden, will provide that this morning. Welcome, Ms. Borden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Deborah Borden, General Counsel. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. I have 2 state bills to discuss with you today. The first one actually only applies in Prince George's County, but because it was filed as a state bill, I want to make sure that you all are aware of the bill and of our recommendation to oppose the bill. It is SB 832, entitled Prince George's County District Council Zoning Laws Override by Municipal Corporation. The point of this bill is to authorize all 27 municipalities in Prince George's County to override any provision of the county zoning ordinance with a majority vote of the governing body of the municipality. So I probably don't need to explain why this is a problem. The ordinance is very broad. It doesn't give the municipalities the opportunity to enact their own zoning ordinance. It simply gives them the authority to nullify the zoning ordinance in effect, basically the county's ordinance. So this is a problem for a number of reasons. We do think that this bill was probably introduced because someone or someone's constituents were upset about a particular development or developments. It could be a use issue that people are upset about. And so this has certainly gotten our attention. We only found out about this bill 2 days ago. And so we put together what essentially is basically talking points, very high level. This is a bad idea. And we had to do this very quickly because we found out about it on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday we found out that the hearing on it was Wednesday night. So this was a very quick turnaround. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. We do have a plan and have already reached out to the sponsor to try to understand what his concerns are so that we can have a dialogue with him, and maybe there are some things that we can do that won't break zoning in Prince George's County. But for the purposes of this bill, we do request that you vote along with the Prince George's board to oppose this bill.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be going with the Prince George's Board on this one. Any questions or comments from?
I really strongly agree with the position as well. I just had just for context, 27 municipalities in Prince George's, so Montgomery, I think there's very few that have their own zoning authority, right? Most of these small municipalities were, covered by county zoning. Is that the same situation in PG? Are there any municipalities in PG currently that have their own zoning authority, or does the county kind of cover the entire geographic area?
Yes, there is one municipality in Prince George's that has its own zoning authority, and that is the city of Laurel.
Laura, okay, got it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, yeah, I was
And
just curious.
they were exempt from the Regional District Act from the beginning of the act. So for whatever reason, they put their hands up back in the 1950s and said, we don't want to be in the regional district, and they got what they wanted. And so all along, it's been all of Prince George's except for the city of Laurel.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So is there a motion to disapprove what's being put forth by the municipalities?
I move to oppose this bill.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it.
Okay, and bill number 2 is HB 724, Commission on Abandoned and Neglected Maryland Cemeteries. This bill would establish a new commission to oversee generally Maryland cemeteries. One of their first items that they would have to do, according to this bill, is to develop and establish a statewide inventory of cemeteries and burial sites. There are some of the provisions of the bill are a little unclear. It's, for instance, unclear whether abandoned and neglected are well, they're used interchangeably, but in our parlance, abandoned and neglected mean two different things. And so we wanted them to clarify that. We suggested also that they clarify who exactly is going to maintain the statewide inventory. It's a little unclear as to whether the commission, this new commission, is going to be doing that, or if they're expecting an existing entity to do that. We've also suggested that they include the Maryland Historical Trust, MHT, as a member of this new commission. They have a long history of working with people trying to protect historic cemeteries, and they just have a wealth of knowledge in this area, and we think they should be a part of the commission. So happy to answer any questions. I think the planning department developed most of our comments, so I'm sure they can answer any questions about our comments as well. This is an informational item, so we don't need a vote. I just need to know if you have any concerns or want to add any additional information.
I just have a question. It may not be related to this. I had this question: what happens to the cemeteries that are full and they're old? 300 years old. Is this the context for that? And is anybody overseeing those or no? Or is it this bill tries to do that? And so if they inventory and some of them are really bad shape, is there anything that would be done? Or how, where do they get the money? Are they private, maybe the private, cemeteries, they're not in business anymore. I don't know what happens.
Well, that's a big question. So cemeteries that are full, they stop accepting new internments, but they're supposed to make provision for care of the cemetery. Now, some cemeteries are very old, historic. Some of them are overgrown. Some of them are abandoned. We've had situations where we know that there's a cemetery near or even as part of a development, and we have very difficult time trying to figure out who owns it at this point, because sometimes the records are not clear, even about ownership. And so this effort is an effort to centralize the information about our cemeteries in the state, have a central location where you can go and look to see if there is a cemetery in a particular area. That would be an improvement over what we have now. We have no central repository of cemeteries in the state, which makes it very difficult to understand and know where they're located, where the historical ones are, where they are endangered because they have been neglected or abandoned, or because they are close to proposed development, for instance. Developers and property owners don't always know that they have a cemetery. So this is designed to deal with at least some of that by centralizing the information, having someone actually given the authority and the responsibility to gather the information and then creating a centralized database.
Well,
Does that answer some of your question?
I think it's a great idea. That's a good start. And then after that, I'm hoping that they be able to come with a plan that, what they do with them, if it is completely abandoned and is not taken care of, and what is their future.
I think that might be the next step. But our first step is just knowing where these cemeteries and burial sites are located. And that's a big job in and of itself, because like I said, the records can be very difficult to track down. And it can be very difficult to be sure that you have a cemetery, that you have the boundaries of the cemetery, and that you know who's interred there. So yeah, I think this is a step in that direction. I don't think it's the last we'll see in this effort.
Great comments, Vice Chair, and thank you for presenting this, Attorney Borden. And if there are no other, so this is informational, so we aren't voting on this, but thank you for bringing that to our attention. And we will look forward to next week's discussions. And I know that we're in legislative season, so we'll have this every board meeting for the next few weeks. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll start with our next item, Friendship Heights Sector Plan Scope of Work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. We're on item number 6, Friendship Heights Sector Plan Scope of Work. And from the Planning Department, we have Ms. Margolis to present this. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. For the record, this is Atara Margulies, and I'm a planner in the Down County Division. Today, I'm here to present the scope of work for the Friendship Heights Sector Plan. And of course, although I'm the one sitting at the table, I represent a large, talented team of planning and parks colleagues. And I do apologize for my voice today, and if I have to pause to take a sip of water, I apologize for that too. Today, we will cover a brief introduction to Friendship Heights, background on recent planning work, and then review the proposed scope of work and the proposed plan boundary. We are here today to ask the board to approve this scope of work so that we can move forward with the plan. Let's first talk about some geography, context, and basic background. Friendship Heights is a unique cross-jurisdictional urban area located where Wisconsin Avenue meets Western Avenue at the border with Washington, D.C., as you can see in the aerial map on the left. Friendship Heights is actually located on both sides of the border, and this is a key characteristic that we will be keeping in mind throughout the project. Even as obviously we can only make recommendations on the Maryland side, the dual jurisdictional nature of Friendship Heights is something that's quite unique even in this region. Friendship Heights is located in an area of Chevy Chase that has numerous special taxing districts and municipalities as shown in the map on the right. I will just note, we have been and will continue to coordinate with all of these communities both before and during the plan process, as we've already started doing. And I also want to just note from a legal perspective that the maps in the scope of work and in this presentation indicate these areas as bound by municipal borders, even though some are special taxing districts. We're using the term kind of colloquially because from the planning purposes, for our purposes, there's not a significant difference. From a legal perspective, of course, there is, and I will also note that while all of these mini jurisdictions do have some level of local governance in their respective areas, none of them have land use or zoning authority, which is sort of relevant for our purposes. Many of them do control their own roads, and I'll talk about that later on. So a brief history of Friendship Heights. So like much of Montgomery County, Friendship Heights was farmland until the early 1900s. And at that point, two major landowners from the Offutt and Shoemaker families that owned farms in this area combined their land and began subdividing it. This was at the same time that Francis Newlands and the Chevy Chase Land Company were developing Chevy Chase. Washington, D.C. was growing, and there were plans to extend the streetcar system north into Maryland, and so that kind of prompted some of the interest in redeveloping this area. Both Chevy Chase and Friendship Heights developed around the same time into single-family home neighborhoods that were primarily for upper middle class to wealthy white families. You can see a picture of a house on the top left here. This was what the single-family houses typically looked like in Friendship Heights from the time they started developing until about the mid-1950s. Inspired in the early 50s by the success of the Hecht's department store that opened in downtown Silver Spring on the other side of the county in 1947, Woodward and Lothrop, a very popular DC department store at that time, opened a store at the corner of Western and Wisconsin, which was kind of revolutionary at just a few years later, and that's the bottom left-hand picture, courtesy of the Chevy Chase Historical Society. This is Woody's at that corner. This is actually Wisconsin, and this is Western as it turns around right here. It was successful, and then it was quickly followed by Lord & Taylor across the street and numerous other large retailers. Geico built their headquarters here in 1959, and a mere decade later, Friendship Heights was already known as a place to shop with a growing business community. And we'll just take a minute to look at this aerial sort of bird's eye here. This is Woodward and Lothrop. It already grew in this picture. You can see the curved facade is the same one as here. Here's the Geico headquarters, and this triangle that I'm outlining on the screen now is the village of Friendship Heights, and as you can see, it's all single-family homes, and this is in 1963. Right after this, the zoning changes because that core at Wisconsin and Western had been growing and becoming more of a mixed-use neighborhood, so the zoning changes to allow for higher densities. This prompts many of the residents of Friendship Heights to begin selling their single-family homes to developers, sometimes in groups. So in very short order, nearly all of those properties were sold to developers and multifamily apartment buildings were built. And the transformation was incredibly fast for a development of an urban area. That image on the previous slide was from 63. You can see already the aerial in the middle here from 79. I know it's a bit blurry because that's what we have, but it's all apartment buildings. You can sort of see from the massing and the shadows. And the transformation was that fast. And now certainly by the 1990s, when the existing sector plan was written that we'll talk about in a minute, it was a popular regional destination. It was an urban area at this point. Nobody would characterize it as anything but. And then you can see by 2021, sort of what the fabric looks like today, Wisconsin Place has developed, and there's more development on the DC side right around that corner of Wisconsin and Western. So today, Friendship Heights, it's not quite what it was 25 years ago in terms of a regional destination. In the 1990s, much of the retail that we've just been talking about, both sides of the border, was those large department stores or even malls with indoor shopping. And as those types of retail experiences became less popular, the market in Friendship Heights began to decline. And so by the time the pandemic hit, it was already struggling, and that sort of pushed it even further in that direction. And it was impacted, in the same way many of our retail corridors were at that time, but because they were already struggling beforehand, their rebound was a little bit more difficult. They haven't fully rebounded yet, although they have somewhat, and there are still some empty storefronts, and some stores still have trouble drawing customers. But with that, it is still a mixed-use neighborhood, and there are some places on Wisconsin Avenue that do still draw people. There are some popular restaurants that people told us all the time they still love to go to. And in our engagement that we did, that I will talk about shortly, for both the urban design study that was completed and so far what we've done for the sector plan, we would say that, anecdotally, the Whole Foods supermarket and the medical offices in Friendship Heights are the two things that draw people there today. An exciting development that, of course, this board is aware of is that in 2023, the first new multifamily development in over a decade or more was approved for Friendship Heights. The rendering is in the top right. It will bring around 300 new apartment units, including 15% moderately priced dwelling units, which is actually a new thing for Friendship Heights that hadn't happened, mostly based on when their development took place, and then a long pause until today. So the existing sector plan for this area was approved and adopted in 1998. Major recommendations that were achieved include the Wisconsin Place development, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. That includes an apartment building, an office building, retail, and a county community rec center. The collection commercial development that lines the east side of Wisconsin Avenue was also developed as a result of this plan. However, the plan hinged many of its housing goals on the redevelopment of the Geico property. And while a plan was approved shortly after the 1998 plan was adopted, and it does still remain valid today, no further steps have been taken towards implementation of that plan. So the 1998 plan fell far short of its own housing goals. The plan also had recommended several pedestrian and bike improvements and new and improved parks and open spaces. A few of those were implemented, but many of them were not. This is the boundary for the 1998 sector plan, and this encompasses what I think most people would consider downtown Friendship Heights. And just to describe the boundaries briefly, starting at the intersection of Western and Wisconsin, where you see the many entrances to the metro, if you look just up Western to the east, you will see the collection development, and that's where the boundary starts at the back of the collection between that and Western Grove Urban Park. It extends itself. Oh, this mouse doesn't want to appear. Here we go. It goes around the collection, up around the Saks property, crossing over Wisconsin, including all of the Somerset House condos, private development, wrapping around this far end of the village of Friendship Heights, and including all of the Geico property, including Brookdale Neighborhood Park, which is an MNC PPC park that is operated on Geico property, and it comes down to Western again. And so this was the boundary for the 1998 plan, and it's also the boundary that we used for the urban design study. In 2024, we completed this study for Friendship Heights. It focused on the experience of public realm in Friendship Heights. We did some engagement over a few months. We spoke to a few hundred people about their experience of the public realm. I did present the takeaways of this study to this board just a little under a year ago. Assets of Friendship Heights that we talked about then include its great access to multiple modes of transit, its strong pedestrian network, and mature tree canopy, and its network of open spaces. Some of the areas we identified in the study that we wanted to delve further into include the lack of pedestrian connection or easy pedestrian connection between the downtown and the surrounding neighborhoods on the Maryland side, some pedestrian safety issues that we typically encounter in urban areas, and some concerns about park amenities and experiences. And of course, we'll be bringing forward those issues to look at, along with many, many more, as we get into the sector plan. So now I'm going to talk about our proposed study area and our proposed plan boundary for this. For every sector plan, a study area is established that extends far out beyond the plan area. so that the team can gain a deep understanding of the context around the plan. No area exists in a vacuum, of course, and this study area, it is important to note, is only used during the existing conditions phase. And uniquely for this plan, as you can see, we've extended half of the proposed study area into DC. The district is a very important context for this plan, and we will be using this area overall to look at demographics, transportation, housing, and other issues to understand the context of Friendship Heights, and specifically, I think, how the context differs between the different jurisdictions and how Friendship Heights has developed differently in DC and Maryland, and yet they're using the same downtown. And that's we look forward to sort of really getting into those issues and highlighting them, for the board at a future point. Here we have the proposed plan boundary for the sector plan. We have included everything from the 1998 boundary, and we have extended the western boundary to River Road, and we have done this for a few reasons. First of all, this plan is an update to a downtown plan, and we want it to remain downtown focused. Friendship Heights has a myriad of existing issues with regard to economic development, housing, access and connectivity, and several large opportunity sites that deserve study. We have nudged this boundary slightly beyond the downtown to the west just to address one issue in particular. The future of Geico, as we know, will continue to be a major question for Friendship Heights, and we will, of course, be studying it in this plan. Any redevelopment of this site, however, requires definite consideration of connectivity between the blocks of Brookdale that are immediately adjacent to the site. The Geico property literally notches into the neighborhood at the Brookdale Neighborhood Park, which, as I noted before, is a park that is owned by Geico and only operated by MNC PPC. Including these adjacent residential blocks in the plan will allow us to study the potential connections between this immediately adjacent area of Brookdale and downtown Friendship Heights, and particularly take into account whatever that future of Geico is and how those two pieces can be connected. Expanding the boundary this way also allows us to include Willard Avenue Neighborhood Park, which is down at the corner of River and Willard. I'm trying to get, this mouse is causing issues for me, unfortunately. Maybe I can do it this way. No? And that is actually one of the largest parks here. It's one of the few parks with kind of active opportunities for stakeholders, and it is well used by many, which we heard about in our urban design study. The park and planning team would like to study issues like access, programming of this park, and the connections between the park and the neighborhood. And including the park in this plan allows us to do just that. We have many stakeholders have talked to us about this park, so we feel that it is merited to include it in the boundary. Now I'll talk a little bit about our engagement goals and our approach so far. We have 5 main engagement goals. We would like to reach as wide of a range of stakeholders as possible. We want to deliver our message in a clear and straightforward way so everyone understands how they can participate in the sector plan process and what the sector plan process can do. We want to provide a variety of opportunities that will allow stakeholders of all ages and stages of life to participate. We want to continue collaborating with the many community partners, agencies, nonprofits, and other groups that we have started to coordinate with, and we hope to meet more of them. And we want to meet people where they are and understand that that sometimes is the best way to reach a group, is just to come to them simply. So we've been doing a lot of these things already. We communicate with our stakeholders primarily through an e-letter, and we've asked people, and in Friendship Heights, that seems to be the right way to do it. We've got 450 subscribers so far, and hopefully we'll grow that as the plan continues. We go to regular meetings that are being held by local organizations, communities, municipalities, et cetera, to present an update on the plan, to talk about how to stay involved, and we'll continue to do that throughout the plan. We also will obviously hold our own engagement events and that are open to all, and when we do this, they will always be duplicated in a virtual and in-person format, sometimes on separate dates, but so that allow people who cannot show up in person for various reasons to still access the team and get to have the same opportunity to provide feedback and input as you would if you were coming in person. We also will show up at regular community-wide events that are held in Friendship Heights. There are farmers markets and seasonal festivals and things like that. We did that in the urban design study, and we'll continue to do that. And sometimes we will just sit at a table in Friendship Heights during lunchtime outside Whole Foods, just to try and get more people engaged and tell them about the plan if they haven't already heard about it. We already had 2 community kickoff events for this sector plan in the fall. One was virtual and one was in person. This image here is from the event in November at the Wisconsin Place Community Rec Center. I gave a brief presentation about the plan process, and then we split into discussion groups moderated by the planning and park team to talk about what excited people and what concerned them about the future of change in Friendship Heights. There are a few high-level takeaways. There is actually more detail in the attachment 1 that was posted with the scope of work. Most people we talked to admitted that it is time for some change in Friendship Heights. Even if people are positive about that neighborhood and they love it, they acknowledge that it's struggling economically. So if nothing else, that has to be addressed. There is widespread concern about the retail market in Friendship Heights right now. Several people told us they hope that the future includes a more diverse population, specifically more young families in the area, and people know that that means we have to have places for those young families to hang out, to enjoy, to live. Almost everyone is interested in talking about what the Geico parcel could be in the future, and we heard a lot about housing, parks, and community amenities in particular. We also heard some concerns about the pedestrian network, the stuff you hear about in urban areas all over the county that are the things we always address in a sector plan. And we did hear some people who are worried that there could be potential negative impacts of increased density in the downtown. In addition to the kickoff events that we held, we met with many existing community groups in and around Friendship Heights in the fall. Starting in September, we began reaching out to those we already connected with during the urban design study, as well as new groups that we met along the way. We connected with all of these organizations you see here over the last 4 months as part of our pre-scope engagement for this plan. We talked about the urban design study work for those who weren't familiar. We talked about the sector plan process, how we do engagement for sector plans and how important it is, and we reviewed why it was time to update the 1998 plan. To date, I will say that we've focused our engagement with groups on the Maryland side of Friendship Heights, but as we continue the plan work after the scope of work, we will expand our engagement to include groups on the DC side as well, which we always intended to do. It just felt correct to start with the Maryland taxpayers first and then move to the broader group. And we've already started to connect with some groups on that side of the border. Obviously, they are very important users of the downtown, and they will have their own unique perspective to share, and we're sure we will learn a lot from them. And to briefly review the planning context for this plan and the elements we will focus on. As the board is, of course, aware, there are numerous countywide plans and initiatives that inform this Friendship Heights sector plan, as they do all plans. This includes Thrive Montgomery and the Climate Action Plan, to several transportation-related plans, to the Parks Pros Plan, the Parks Recreation and Open Space Plan, and it also, of course, includes council initiatives and laws like the Racial Equity and Social Justice Act of 2019. I would like to highlight for the board the last bullet point on this slide, the Wisconsin Avenue Development Framework, recently completed by the DC Office of Planning in 2023. This plan looks at the development opportunities, open space connections, and possible pedestrian improvements along Wisconsin from Friendship Heights at the Maryland border all the way down to Tenleytown. Now, we meet with DCOP on a regular basis as a matter of our planning practice in Down County. And of course, we did so with even more focus over the last 2 years while they were working on this effort. We even attended some of their engagement events just to understand what was going on there and what they were recommending. And we will be considering the recommendations for the DC side of Friendship Heights as like the relevant context for Friendship Heights on the Maryland side as we move forward. As with every master and sector plan, the Friendship Heights team will start with these 10 plan basic elements. Through exploring each of these plan elements, first during the existing conditions phase, and then during visioning along with the community. And then as we move into drafting preliminary recommendations, we will strive to answer questions like, what does Friendship Heights want to be in 20 years? What is the new vision for this downtown? How can Friendship Heights retain its mixed-use character? What does the market support today, and what might support in the future? What future development opportunities are here, and what are the best approaches? How can Friendship Heights be safer for pedestrians? How can Wisconsin serve as a north-south multimodal corridor that works well for all? How can Friendship Heights be better connected to its surroundings? Does the existing network of parks and public spaces meet the needs of the stakeholders, and if not, how can we improve that network? How can Friendship Heights become more resilient against the impacts of climate change, and how can we protect some of the existing natural resources that we have here? How can access be improved to nearby existing amenities? And how can future development in Friendship Heights support new community amenities to enrich community members' lives? We will delve into all of these questions and even more over the next year or so as we get started. I would like to take a moment to note a correction here to the scope of work that the board received prior to today's meeting. The scope states under the plan elements section, under the historic resources paragraph, that there are actually no historic resources in the plan area, but this is factually incorrect. There is a historic burial site in Brookdale on Murray Road, the Shoemaker family burial site. The Shoemaker family was one of the original owners of the land that became Friendship Heights. We did post a corrected scope as attachment 2, so hopefully you saw that, and we apologize for this admission. And of course, we will keep this important site in mind as we continue with the sector plan work. As with all the work we do, we will be considering how our ultimate plan recommendations address issues of equity in Friendship Heights. Community members have already raised concerns with us about a lack of affordable housing, affordable neighborhood serving retail, and a lack of diversity in the plan area. We will explore these issues, and I'm sure there'll be many more we will uncover during our upcoming existing conditions analysis phase. We will also explore the history of Friendship Heights to understand how, if at all, the past has influenced the present with regard to issues of equity and social justice. There are going to be a lot of partners we're going to be doing this planning work with. And, per our usual practice, of course, we'll coordinate with our Montgomery County agencies, like Montgomery County DOT and Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection as needed, and of course, the Maryland DOT State Highway Administration on Transportation, as is our usual practice. But given the unique cross-jurisdictional nature of this plan, we will also be coordinating with some of our agencies that we partner with across in DC, which includes, of course, DC Office of Planning, as we've already been doing, and we've also already started to coordinate with the District DOT and WMATA on this plan. We will also be coordinating with the Village of Friendship Heights, as they are the special taxing district located inside the proposed plan boundary, and on all recommendations that impact them, particularly transportation, because they do have jurisdiction over their own streets. We are planning actually to form a transportation working group of sorts for this plan with representation from all relevant entities, because there are so many, so that we can stay coordinated and particularly sort of transparent about many of the complex issues that relate to transit, bikes, vehicles, and pedestrians in Friendship Heights. And lastly, I would just like to mention our ongoing coordination since the beginning of the urban design study with the Friendship Heights Alliance and the Friendship Heights Urban District, both of which were newly created in the last few years. Their partnership has been valuable since day one. They are very committed to the future of Friendship Heights, and they've been a great partner so far, and we look forward to continuing that partnership. We have 2 consultants engaged on this plan. We've been working with the engagement consultant Brick and Story since the urban design study, and they're continuing with us into the sector plan. We've also brought on RCLCO, which is a local real estate consulting firm, and they are on board to assist us with market analysis and also just looking at some of the possible opportunities here on major potential sites in the downtown. A quick glance at our plan schedule. As discussed earlier, we completed a few months of pre-scope engagement in the fall of last year, and here we are at the scope of work presentation. We will jump right into existing conditions and then move quickly into visioning by late spring, continuing it through the summer and into the fall. We will then move into preliminary recommendations in the fall with a goal right now of completing the working draft and hoping to transmit it to the council by the spring of 2026. And that's what I have for today. We ask the board to approve the scope of work and proposed boundary. We'll jump right into the next phase of work. And of course, we also continue our engagement work over the next few months, because we'd like to broaden our stakeholder base in advance of visioning in the spring. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Ms. McGurlis. Thank you for providing this overview and your recommendations for the boundary area. I just have it's ambitious to schedule, but it's definitely needed to meet that schedule, so they can go to county council in the spring before they recess in 2026. I know that housing is the area has a great need for housing, and the key is how do you do other options like retail and commercial. I know that office buildings are generally not the thing, I don't know, they're not very successful these days, but it'd be good if when you look at what other can work, maybe some of these major retail developers that have a lot of experience. I mean, hopefully you'll be talking to them when you're doing your study to get feedback from them, because there's some really great ones around, and that they can also help you as you look through what's the right type of mixed use to put in there. But thank you so much for your work. I know everyone talks about the Geico property, how important that is, and hopefully that can get integrated in a way that's creates the complete communities and works well with the plan. So those are my comments. Keep moving forward fast, and we look forward to you coming back at the end of, I guess, in the fall with your preliminary plans. Thank you.
I have some questions.
Please.
Geico property, I'll start with that. I'm assuming it's still owned by Geico? Okay. Have we talked to them? Okay.
Yes, we've begun initial conversations, and they've
Okay.
heard an initial presentation about our process and everything so far.
Okay, so hopefully they're interested to move forward. We don't know.
It's pretty early, and we also didn't have the scope approved yet, but they're
Okay.
certainly engaged.
Okay, so we have the 1998 plan that apparently was not implemented the way that we had hoped. And also, I remember that we did a study of Friendship Heights. Was it last year that we did a study? Yeah. So do we know what are the lessons learned that what happened? Because we did, at 1998, you mentioned that the zoning was changed, introduced more multifamily. And, what can we do different now that we could have? And I'm sure that you have the study also. I don't remember the study that we had, but I do remember that we talked about it at that time also.
So I will clarify that the zoning history in Friendship Heights is very interesting. And I didn't go through all of it here, but it sort of merits its own discussion, the history of zoning in Friendship Heights. Because the downtown, so to go back a few decades, because I think this will clarify a bit of what 1998 plan did and did not accomplish. In the 60s, because it was growing so fast, there was a plan in 1964, which of course was sort of at the time when this department had put together sort of getting their first idea about a general plan for the county with overall direction, and we're looking at really getting comprehensive master plans done everywhere. There was a plan in the 60s that did provide, sort of bumped Friendship Heights up to zoning that was, appropriate for like an urban downtown because they had so much retail and Geico was already there. That sparked all those multifamily buildings coming online quickly in addition to more commercial development. People felt that it was developing too fast, and it was developing quite fast. And so actually in the 70s, they stopped, they sort of moved the zoning down a bit. They downzoned, which is a little bit unusual, but at the time they did that, and it kind of stayed at that lower level through the next two plans. And so at the 1998 plan, there were some changes made, and the major change was to look at the zoning on Geico to try and encourage new development there. There was some great success from 1998. Wisconsin Place was a major development, and it is there today, basically exactly as the sector plan imagined it. And that did bring new office, new retail, new residential, and the Whole Foods, and new open space. I mean, it did a lot for that particular parcel. Geico did go forward and develop a concept plan, and they got a preliminary plan approved here, and that approval is still valid, but it's a privately owned property, and they never went ahead to develop it. I think now we have to look again what's proposed there. It's a question, I think, of whether that even could be developed in today's market. It's a mix of buildings that developers might not look favorably on today as a whole. And so now it's another chance to say, okay, it's time to look again at the opportunity sites. There's actually more opportunity sites than Geico probably in downtown. We just haven't done a full analysis, but we have some thoughts already. And to figure out what today's market can sustain. And I think the chair's question about commercial development is a very good one and something we will be looking into quite seriously. And so it's challenging because the Geico property is a huge portion of the downtown. So the last plan was hinging a lot of its housing goals on that property in particular. I think we've already identified several other opportunity sites in the downtown where we won't have to, maybe put all the eggs in one basket. We're going to try and figure out other ways that we can get, more value out of some of those sites and additional housing in particular in an area where there is basically no affordable housing today and only one project coming down the pike with some. And that's obviously an issue that an issue that we would identify for an area on top of a metro, but also an issue we heard from people. It's expensive, and they in general on this area of the county. And so I think there are I think we will take a little bit of a broader look than the last plan did in terms of opportunities for those things to happen.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit, I guess that until we learn, Bethesda is not that far, and we have had great success there. It's bloom. It's completely the face of Bethesda change. And it looked like that a lot of changes has happened in that area and not much in here. And I know that it was a lot of other, shopping centers there that has changed face there. I haven't been there recently to see how much more it has changed, but it used to be a place that everybody used to go. And now it's not there anymore. So it's very strange that two areas that this is a perfect area. It's right next to DC. It has a lot of opportunity in there. I understand that Geico is the biggest one, but I think it is just because of the location, it probably has more potential in addition to Geico. And hopefully with this new plan, we could unfold those opportunities to come.
Commissioner Linden.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say other than I think it looks really good and ambitious, like Chair mentioned, which I think is good, and both in terms of scope and also the speed at which we're proposing to do this, which is, I think, something that we're all increasingly interested in. And I know it's also obviously a lot of pressure on staff, and requires a lot of collaboration and just dedicated resources, but. It's exciting for that reason. I'm also excited about the focus on connectivity, as you've talked about, because as you've mentioned, Geico takes up a huge piece of land and just kind of cordoning off an entire section of this downtown area. On the other side, the plan area, the proposed plan boundary doesn't include these neighborhoods in Chevy Chase Village, and I know there's obviously some tricky issues about access into those areas for a variety of reasons. But there are a variety of connectivity challenges, and we talked about that a little bit in the urban design study, I remember, and this feels like a great opportunity to address those, like you've talked about. So that's exciting. And the only thing, I guess I do have one question about consideration around the plan boundary on the east side of the downtown, specifically looking at the Western Grove Urban Park and whether that was considered to be included for any particular reason, or if there were needs if there was like a needs assessment about parks in this area and whether or not that kind of factored into that boundary decision.
Hi, everybody. Henry Coppola, Parks Long Range Planning Supervisor. So Western Grove is a relatively new park that had a lot of work done at it. I don't know off the top of my head, but 2017? Excellent. Excellent support. So because it's been so recently addressed, it wasn't a top priority for us to expand it that way. And then I think deferring to it, Tara, but that kind of keeps the boundary neater if we don't try to absorb it when we didn't really need to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for that context.
I will add that even if we don't include that park, we can still look at connections between that park and the downtown, which is a big issue right now. Actually, we learned in the urban design study that some people didn't know where that park was, and I think it's just because of the wall.
Right.
And so there, the collection is in there, so we have the opportunity to think about wayfinding or other connecting opportunities. But as Henry said, it's a new park, and of course, when we include a park in a sector plan, one of the things we do is start talking about like what park improvements we can look forward to. And there are other parks in here, Brookdale neighborhood, Willard Avenue, that need sort of more attention, and we want to make sure we focus on those in the sector plan.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm glad to hear that even areas that are outside the boundary but adjacent to the boundary, we're thinking about connections in those areas too. They're obviously part of the broader kind of like study area, which looks at that. Because both, looking west, northwest, across that park area, which is a bit of a boundary in terms of reaching the downtown, like that's a kind of a connection challenge, but maybe opportunity, and then kind of going east as well, particularly into the neighborhoods there. So yeah, it's exciting. So thanks for presenting this, and look forward to getting this going.
Henry, you're here. I want to ask a question. It's very interesting for me that Brookdale Neighborhood Park, we built something on somewhere that we didn't own the land. What are the facilities we have on that park?
I do not know off the top of my head. We do control the property. It is considered parkland. It's under a lease from Geico, so it is secure in that it is parkland currently, which is why we were able to construct improvements on it. I believe we have a playground. This is the time when I would call up the aerial and double check.
Yeah, I think
There's a
it
playground.
probably we cannot use bond if it is on a leased land. That's what I understand. That's why it's going to be a little bit hard. But the idea, if Geico would be developed, this park probably would be redeveloped, or
Correct.
hopefully they're going to give us this park, or
Right,
is it? We
the
don't know.
lease arrangement has always been intended to be a temporary bridge to creating a more permanent park.
Okay.
If and when the larger Geico property redevelopment happens.
So what is the status of all the parks on Willard and you have another one, Winton? Those are not built here. Those are part of the future.
Those are Town of Somerset parks.
Yeah, Vinton Park is owned by the town of Somerset.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
But
Willard Avenue is owned by MNCPPC, that, we own the land there.
Correct.
we own the land, but the park is developed there.
At Willard Avenue?
Yeah.
Yes,
that
yeah.
is
Willard Avenue has a playground, a basketball court, I believe, paved and natural surface trails. And we have, there's a park house. There were recently a couple of additional houses that are adjacent to it, which were purchased so that we could work on expanding it. And so the Parks Department's kind of in the process of thinking about what that means, what opportunities we now have, which makes it a great park to have included in this plan so that we can piggyback and leverage on all of the great
So the
engagement
reason
we'll have.
Winton Park is not included in the plan because it belongs to Somerset?
Yeah, it's totally under their control.
Okay, thank you.
And I will add, just to the connectivity point Commissioner Linden brought up, and I went over this in the urban design study, but just as a reminder, there are also, parks that the Village of Friendship Heights controls that are inside here that I didn't label. They're very small on the plan, but there are a few. And through this one that I'm pointing to right here, which is Page Park, there's actually a path through this wooded area. That's the only pedestrian connection from Somerset into Friendship Heights that's not like on Wisconsin. And that goes through Vinton Park, and that's all managed by Town of Somerset.
One last question. You talked about the district doing their own study. How far ahead are they, or you will be ending up about the same time, so that, could you let us know that?
So they're ahead of us. They did, and of course, they have a different planning and zoning process, as I'm sure everyone is aware. So they did what they call a framework plan, and they did it over like 2022 and 2023. But we meet with them monthly. Down County does all the time because of our many projects that are sort of interfacing with each other, and particularly since they started working in Friendship Heights, we made sure to keep that meeting every month and talk about what they were doing. And so they have already completed that framework plan. But their process is a little bit different. I'm not an expert on it at all, but they have to now go through a separate process to try and change some of the zoning to get to the zoning proposals that were in that plan. And that is only just starting now, and they're doing engagement around it. So that has yet to sort of get formalized. But they do have some, rendering type images and some sketches of development opportunities along that initial corridor. I mean, they go all the way down to Tenleytown. We're just focused on those first 5 to 10 blocks that kind of could be considered part of the Friendship Heights context. And so, like I said, their recommendations, because that's their vision, we will take that seriously in terms of that's the context we're expecting, that could happen in the next 20 years there. Right. It's a similar vision timeline. So it's actually been nice because we got to hear a little bit what they would like to see on that side. And of course, there is already a major redevelopment happening on their side where the Mazza Gallery used to be, which is on the southwest corner of Wisconsin and Western, where the Metro entrance is. I think that entrance has been closed for a while. This mouse is not like me today. Right there. That used to be a mall, and that's been torn down, and it's going to be multifamily with ground floor retail, and it's very much a good way under construction, nearing completion. And they've got a few other things that hopefully will happen for a little bit farther down Wisconsin, and they keep us apprised of those, every time we meet. So they've also been, I will say, very helpful in getting us connected to sort of the people we should be talking to at DDOT, for example, which isn't necessarily a group that we coordinate so often with. So that was great, just having DCOP help us make those connections. And they've offered to help introduce us to the neighborhoods on that side because they've got a long-standing relationship, of course, with them. So when we get into that engagement, they'll be involved as well.
Great, and also maybe you also have a sense of where they're looking at connections and along Western and Great. Thank you. I look forward to the next steps, and we're going to take.
You need to
I'm
make a
sorry.
motion on this item.
Oh, okay, yeah. We're going to make a motion to, is there a motion to approve the Friendship Heights Sector Plan proposed scope of work?
I move to approve the Friendship Heights sector plan.
And that includes the scope of work, including the boundaries that were shown.
Yes,
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye, the ayes have it, 3-0. We're just going to take a 1-minute break and start our next item, which is the item number 7, mandatory referral number MR 2025007 and Forest Conservation Plan number F 2025-0240 Brighton Station Statcom expansion, where staff is recommending approval of the mandatory referral with comments to be transmitted to PEPCO and approval of the Forest Conservation Plan with conditions. Thank you. Good afternoon. We're on our last item of the afternoon. It's item number 7, mandatory referral number MR 2025-007 and Forest Conservation Plan number F 2025-0240, Brighton Station StatCom expansion, where staff is recommending approval of the mandatory referral with comments to be transmitted to PEPCO and approval of the Forest Conservation Plan with condition. And this afternoon, we have Mark Beal of the Planning Department presenting this item. Welcome.
Thank you. For the record, Mark Beal, zoning planner for Up County Planning Division. Today I bring to you the mandatory referral for the Brighton Substation SATCOM expansion, and the mandatory referral number is MR 2025007. The property is located at 1300 Brighton Dam Road in this location here. It is approximately 500 feet west of the intersection of New Hampshire Avenue and Brighton Dam Road. The subject property, as well as the surrounding areas, all zoned RC, rural cluster, and it is primarily made up of low-density residential development, as well as a park to the left, or to the west, and to the south. The property is approximately 232 acres. It is an existing PEPCO substation. It takes up about 12 acres right now in this area, or 21 acres in this area here. And there's an existing access off of Brighton Dam Road at this location with a road coming in there. So this application is to expand the substation in this area here, install a new building, and construct a new driveway off of the existing driveway, and install a new 30,000-gallon cistern for fire protection in this location. Just so you can see the difference of what's existing and what's new, what's outlined here in green is roughly what's existing, and then the red line is what is being proposed. Here's a little 3D rendering of the proposed work of the expansion. The existing substation you can see is over here to this side, which is the east side or right side in the picture, and you can see due north is kind of up to the corner of the page. This property falls within the 2005 Alny Master Plan. This area, it talks about keeping the rural character, which this application does. It sits so far back off the road no one can see it. And there are no specific recommendations for this site. At this time, I'll turn it over to Josh Penn for the environmental.
Good afternoon. For the record, Josh Penn with Up County Planning Division. This does have a natural resource inventory forest and delineation for 2024-02500. It's on about 231 acres of land with about 171 acres of forest. It is located in the Rocky Gorge Dam watershed, which is a tributary to the Patuxent and Halling River watersheds, which is important a little later in the presentation. There's about 43 acres of stream valley buffer on site. We're looking at environmental guidelines. We do have some stream valley buffer encroachments, which are not something we usually see. We usually try to protect the buffers. But based upon the location of the existing substation and the proposed substation, we did look at a bunch of alternative analyses for the site of where they could possibly put the substation, and they showed us all the upsides and all the downsides. And basically, this location is the only feasible location on site due to constraints of how they have to provide the power incoming and outgoing. So it is about 23,000 square feet of temporary impacts and 20,000 square feet of permanent impacts. The temporary impacts are being mitigated 1-to-1 on site, and the permanent impacts 2-to-1 on site. Okay, like I mentioned before, this is in the Patuxent River management area because it is a tributary to the Hollings River and Patuxent River watersheds. And in these areas, we are trying to limit the imperviousness as per the Patuxent River watershed management functional plan, excuse me, lost the word there for a second. And there is a 10% impervious cap that is imposed via the environmental guidelines. The existing substation without any improvements is already at 9.62%, and with the proposed, we are going to be about 12.25%, which is over the 10% limit. However, staff did review this and looked at it, and when we looked at it, we're like, really, this needs to be done. We don't have a choice. It is a mandatory requirement for PEPCO to do so, and it is for providing stable electricity to the citizens of Montgomery County. With that, we did look at the environmental guidelines, and there is a waiver in the environmental guidelines that the planning board, at their discretion, may approve, waiver, and amend staff recommendations on anything in this document. And so we're bringing it to the board here today with the understanding that it is over the 10% cap, but for the reasons for the public need and for the mandated improvements, there is no question that this must be done, and staff does support the excess of the 2.25 over the impervious cap for the reasons that we stated in the staff report. So staff does support the exemption or the waiver to the environmental guidelines. So we would be exceeding it by 2.25%, but we are also preserving a good portion of the property, 125.49 acres of forest on the property. So it's not like it is we're doing a lot and a little. We're doing a lot, but on a very big piece of property with a lot of forest. And it is the minimum amount necessary to achieve the goal of the plan and the mandated improvements. And denying the waiver would have a direct negative impact on the public interest and the public at large for Montgomery County. Forest conservation is 226 acres, does have a 15% afforestation threshold, 20% reforestation threshold. They are counting 45 acres of forest cleared, and the remainder will be conserved. For this project, we are doing it into two categories, a Category 1 easement because of, well, let me go. We're doing a standard Category 1 over about 70 acres and a modified over 54. The modified language for the easement, which we'll work out with legal staff afterwards, is that if the laws change in the future that allow more impervious surfaces for public projects, and that if they have new mandated expansions for the substation, they could remove this section or these sections as defined on the Forest Conservation Plan without penalty. Since they're already over the threshold, this is areas above the minimum retention threshold for the site. So there would be no penalty in the worksheet, but we just wanted to make sure that they wouldn't be subject to future penalties, easement removal penalties by the board for doing something that may or may not be required of them to do in the future. So in the modified areas, that 54 acres, there will be a note inside the legal document saying, if it's deemed necessary by the planning board to remove this, there will be no future penalty for removing that easement at that time. And that's why we modified the easement. There is also a variance request. We have a variance request in two parts for you today, which is a little bit different. We have the tree variance request, which is one section of the variance, but we also have the newest addition to the variance request, that is forest in a stream valley buffer not for uses not allowed in the environmental guidelines. That is a new separate section that was added to the variance request in the latest rounds of forest conservation law changes. So we do have a 44,000 roughly square foot impacted stream valley buffer, which are not uses that are typically allowed in the environmental guidelines. But based upon what we talked about earlier with waiving the impervious cap, if we don't allow this expansion or this area to be cleared, then we're going to have direct negative impact on the populace of Montgomery County and, have a negative effect on the ability to provide electricity. So staff did believe that was an unwarranted hardship for both the trees and for the disturbance within the stream valley buffer. You can see here, here's the distribution of the trees. The red trees with the dotted outline are the trees to be removed. The green with the solid outline are the trees that are impacted but not removed. They are providing mitigation for all the trees to be removed, and staff is supporting the variance request. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. So for transportation, like we mentioned before, there's an existing entrance off of Brighton Dam Road at this location with an existing driveway. There's a proposed extension of the existing driveway on site. There will be no new connections to the public road with county or state. And because it's an unmanned facility, there will be no significant traffic, and therefore it is exempt from the traffic impact study. So all noticing requirements have been met. And right as the staff report was being posted, we received an email correspondence from the Patuxent Watershed Protective Association. The email went to the staff, chair's office, and PEPCO. Made a compliment about the forest conservation plan, as well as made some suggestions to PEPCO. And PEPCO replied to the email with acknowledgement, as well as saying they will work with them to work out those details. In the last couple of days, the chair's office received an email from a neighbor with primarily concerns of construction timeline, noise, disruptions and impacts to the neighbors, road closures, both temporary and permanent, as well as the road integrity with the construction equipment going in and out of the property. As we're aware, DPS, Department of Permitting Services, and Department of Environmental Protection handle those sort of issues during the construction process. That's not something staff gets involved with. Staff made a couple recommendations in the staff report. And again, as the staff report was getting posted, the stormwater management concept plan actually got accepted by DPS. So that condition has already been satisfied, as well as they have now received an approved forest fire department access plan. So that condition has been satisfied. So staff makes a recommendation of approval of the mandatory referral and transmittal comments to PEPCO, and approval with conditions for the forest conservation plan. Thank you. Staff is here if you have any questions, as well as PEPCO. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Would the applicant like to make any statement?
Yes, Chair, thank you so much. We do have a presentation, so we will present that now. My name is Danielle Friedman. I'm the Manager of Governmental and External Affairs for PEPCO. I'll have my colleague.
Good afternoon. My name is Astor Rubiso, Manager of Project Execution for this portfolio of projects.
Great. Well, thank you again, Chair Harris, for having us, Commissioners, Mark and Josh, for all of your help, and of course, planning staff for having us today, and for sticking with us all day. I know it was a long day for everybody. I just want to take us back a bit. I think everybody knows PEPCO as the utility that handles Montgomery, Prince George's, and the district, but we're more than energy. And so I want to just give us a little glimpse as to who PEPCO is in the community. We live here, we work here, and we know that the climate goals of Montgomery County are very important. The climate goals of Maryland are very important, and we are partners in that work. And so whether it's our 250 EV charging network that we rolled out in Montgomery and Prince George's County, 4 of those that are actually nearby this project in Olney and Ashton. Of course, the project is in Brookville. Or our own Path to Clean, which we rolled out in 2021, which seeks to reduce our own operational emissions by 50% by 2030 and by 100% by 2050, something that we are very proud of and very dedicated to, or whether it's our corporate funding. In the last year alone, we gave $1 million to local organizations, and we are on track to give nearly $8.7 million through 2025 across PHI. So we're very proud of that, and we also know that there are organizations that we work with every day doing very necessary work to support the climate goals of Montgomery County. Just like One Montgomery Green, that we know is very important to Montgomery County. We cherish them deeply, but we also know that trees are important. The green footprint of Montgomery County is important, and so we partner with other organizations like the Arbor Day Foundation. In the past spring, we distributed 357 trees to residents in Montgomery and Prince George's counties, and we look forward to doing that again this upcoming year. But we like to get out there as well. Our employees love to get out there ourselves, so we rack up those volunteer hours, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with Montgomery and Prince George's residents, getting out there in the community. Because the truth of the matter is, we live here too. And we know that when projects like these happen in the community, you all want to know why they're happening. And so we're here today to say, as community members, we want to explain a little bit why. So if we go to the next slide. Perfect. So as you may know, in 2023, Talon Energy indicated that they would close the Brandon Shores generation plant in Baltimore. That puts some strain on the grid, and so PJM indicated that there would need to be some transmission upgrades, and as part of those upgrades, PEPCO is expanding our substation at the Brighton substation. That is our Brighton substation in Brookville. And so that brings us to this hearing today, which is why we are asking for this mandatory referral permit.
Thank you, Danielle, and good afternoon again. Again, I think a great presentation by Mark and team, but we want to take a moment and kind of present to you again. PEPCO owns a 231 acres land here, and we are seeking basically an approval to ensure grid reliability and stability by expanding the substation by 6 acres. The expansion will allow us to install critical infrastructure and as an equipment, especially in the light of the retirement of the generation. We have actively collaborated with the team to minimize environmental impacts as much as possible by protecting the resources out there. Again, this project will only involve work on site. We will not have any overhead wires going in and out of the substation. It will be within the substation property. A little bit more about the site details. Again, our limited disturbance is 14 acres with a proposed expansion of 6 acres. And this project will not generate any trips. It is going to be an unmanned substation with maintenance activities happening periodically. As a part of our commitment to, again, executing the project and engaging with the community, we recognize noise pollution is a key concern, and we will work to minimize disruption. The current distance of the nearest resident from this project site specifically is approximately 1,300 feet. Again, our project is to balance efficiency with the community in mind and completing the project with minimal impact to the residents and delivering long-term benefit for the region. Again, talking about the environmental impacts, I think that there was a good presentation earlier. We are here seeking waiver to the 10% cap as well. The securing this waiver will ensure successful implementation of our project. Furthermore, we do recognize that this project has impact on the stream buffers as well as specimen trees. We have worked closely with staff and team to ensure compliance with regulations and have incorporated those feedbacks into our mitigation. Currently, we are replanting on site 347 trees, and additionally, 124 acres of forest will be in an easement, which equates to about 54% of the site and 73% of the forest acreage on site. As it relates to the stormwater management, again, this has been accepted by the county. We have utilized every available area to effectively design the stormwater management, was focusing on the environmental impacts as well. We understand the importance of protecting the environment. As a result, we are providing 11,000 cubic feet of volume for stormwater management via bioswales, and we were going to be seeking a waiver for the 19,000 as well. This brings us into the project timeline. Again, pending the approval of the permit, we are planning to start the site preparation Q2 of 2025 with the intent to start the substation equipment work in Q1 of 2026. The plan is to finish all this work by Q4 of 2028. Again, there's various states. We are currently in design about 60%. So we are going through the onboarding the contractors and collaborating with our contractors as well. And the end goal, again, we're ready to execute this project and meet the timeline established here by Q4 2028.
Thanks, Astaway. And just to wrap up, I'm actually really pleased you've heard a lot about community engagement today. And we just have one more community engagement slide as well. That's something that's near and dear to us at PEPCO, and we've certainly done our due diligence here. Over the past year, we've taken those critical steps to make sure that we are communicating not only to the community, which we have done last summer. We sent out letters to 3,000 residents. As a company norm, we typically do a 1 mile radius, but because this project is very important, we went the extra mile, literally, and sent out to an additional mile to a 2 mile radius, just to make sure that we are being as transparent as possible and that residents know what's going on in their backyard. And we also conducted outreach to our state and local and federal offices. And so we continue to have those conversations, and that outreach will continue as this project goes on. And I know a comment was made about a call that came in yesterday, or letter that's in the packet that you all have from Ms. Heather Greenstone. And I talked to her yesterday, and I was able to answer all of her concerns. And so she has my number and my email. And so that will continue, and that's just kind of how we roll. If customers have issues or concerns, we make ourselves available, and we will continue to do that. And if you have any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have a couple questions.
Sure.
Just curious and just for my education. So you said that a plant is being shut down, and then therefore you need to upgrade this area for stability or whatever. Part of me thinks you shut down something. Why would you need to upgrade this? I mean, and also, can you give us a definition? What happens at a substation? Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so as the branch shore generation retirement, as a result of that, Brighton is one scope of work for this proposed solutions. We do have transmission line that BGE is constructing to connect to another generation from Pennsylvania and bringing the power down ultimately. That is the complete scope of work that we are going to be executing. So Brighton is one substation that is being upgraded as a part of that solution. In terms of substation, we do have Rodwin Maludi that could speak to a little bit about what a substation does to help you with that answer.
Good afternoon. Radwan Maludi, I'm a project engineer at PEPCO. And to answer your question about why the power plant is closing and affecting this area, power plant was generating energy for specific load. Once that power plant is decommissioned and no provisions were made to replace the power plant to take care of that load. Sometimes that will create basically issues in the transmission corridor once the load of the area exceeds what the generation is. So we took generation without replacing it. What that does is it creates issues with the quality of the power. The voltage, the current may collapse when the load exceeds the generation. To alleviate that, we are installing 3 SATCOMs in this corridor of 500 kV transmission lines, 2 of them up north in BGE, closer to the plant, and 1 over here. It was determined that these are the optimal locations. So what happened is, like I said, when the load exceeds generation, we start having issues with the voltage. And to avoid outages, once the quality drops, we have systems in place that will trigger trigger disconnection of the equipment.
But you're not building it until 28, and this goes out of commission in 25. So what happens during that 3 years?
Yeah, so just to clarify, so Talon Energy, they said that they're going to close their coal-powered plant. That's good for the environment. We can all agree that that's good for the environment. But you're right, that creates issues on the system that can't happen right now. And so they came to an agreement with PJM. And so what's going to happen is they are going to stay open through 2029 to allow for the utilities that PJM has said, hey, we need you to do these upgrades. They're going to stay open through 2029 to allow us to do the necessary work that we need to do. And then in 2029, they will ultimately shut down. So this work, as we brought up in the slide, will happen from 2025 through 2028. And so it will all sort of coincide in the correct timeline.
So when they say they're open, they're not going to do coal firing of generation, but they stay open for distribution, or are they going to still shutting down the generation of the coal fire source by June of this year? Or they're going to continue until 29?
They're going to continue until we're ready, until our projects are completed.
Okay, great, thank
And
you. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and we are dedicated to moving this project as quickly as possible to ensure that we are keeping on that timeline.
Okay, great. And I guess at some time in the future, we generate more energy, you'll have to do something else.
Yes, we're working on that. We're trying to bring in new transmission lines, new energy from other places.
Yeah, okay. Next question, Sue. So I can understand, there are some mitigations that you need to do because, one, you're taking down trees in this area, and also you're encroaching into the Stream Valley buffer. So one was this 2-to-1 mitigation because you were taking down the trees, and then what was the mitigation for?
Right. There was two. There's permanent impacts that cannot be alleviated after construction. And they were doing that 2-to-1 because it's going to be a permanent resource loss. The area that they're clearing of forest that is a temporary loss or temporary impact, they're doing at 1-to-1, aka they're going to disturb that area and then replant it so that there's no actual loss from that. So there'll be no permanent removal, but we're going to restore it. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, those are my questions. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So we need to make a couple of the motions here, a couple approvals. So when we need to do the ones for the impact that we're, tell me how many motions we need, approvals.
There will be two motions, one for the mandatory referral, the one for the forest conservation. The forest conservation plan will combine the environmental guidelines issues, the variance issues, all that together under that approval.
Okay, great, great. All right, so do I have a motion to approve the mandatory referral with comments to be transmitted to PEPCO?
I move to approve the mandatory referral and submit the comments to PEPCO.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. The next, do I have a motion to approve the forest conservation plan with conditions?
I move to approve the forest conservation plan with comments
Second.
That's with conditions.
and conditions,
Right, and it includes the waivers.
and including the waivers.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. We appreciate you bringing this up. Meeting the needs of the customers for electricity is really important, and we appreciate your going beyond your normal to get community feedback and continue to providing more, grants, volunteering in the community. It's so needed. Thank you so much. So, yeah, this ends our board meeting for today. We look forward to meeting with you again next week. Thank you.